Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kiali Sprint 2509 community meeting. Today is June 27th, and we'll be discussing the progress and upcoming plans for Kiali. Our agenda for today is straightforward. We'll start with an update on the Kiali version 2.12 release, which is scheduled for Monday, June 30th. Following that, we'll give you a preview of the next sprint, Sprint 2510, and finally, we'll open the floor for community discussion if anybody has anything they want to talk about. This slide is a high-level overview of our achievements during this Sprint 2509. We've made some significant progress, and I'll be diving into the details in the upcoming slides. But you can see most of the work is again in the server, which is typical. A key new feature that we're introducing is the JSON log entry viewer. Now all JSON log lines will have a new enhanced view, and you'll have the flexibility to view the logs as raw JSON or in a more readable table format. And additionally, we've added the ability to easily download or copy the JSON content to your clipboard, which can be helpful for debugging and analysis. This is going to be true for all pods that have JSON logs. So if you have an application pod running and you're looking at its logs and it happens to have JSON messages, you'll be able to see this. There's nothing special you have to do. You'll just see that icon on the left of the log message, you click it, and then you'll get your JSON log entry dialog box that you see here. So for the next slide, I'm going to hand this over to Josune, and she's going to walk us through the updates on the tracing UI.
Yes, thanks, Matt. So one thing that we have in tracing is that the query limit by default is set to 100, but we have been reported that this is not the most accurate value for some of the tracing backends, which may not be so performant, or we may have to increase it because there's another requirements. So we have included a new configuration setting, which let us modify this default. So in this case, we are modifying this trace limit to 20 using the Kiali feature flags, UI defaults, tracing.limit. And in the screenshot there, you can see how this value is applied. So if we go to any workload and go to the traces tab, in this case, we are going to be able to see like a maximum of 20 results. And we also have modified a display component, which let us modify the trace limit in the UX, because even if the default is 20, the user is going to be able to modify this limit. And we are including a slider, which is much more flexible than the fixed values that we had before. So now this value is going to be changed from a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 1,000, where that is a restriction from the Kiali server, and it's going to be changed from a multiple of 10. And also this value is going to be, as before, is going to be saved in the session, and it's also stored in the URL, which is going to be bookmarkable in case we want to share, for example, a link. And that's it from this slide, Matt. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to do a short demo for this feature, which is the tracing tool and the configuration tester. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So we have been working on improving this tracing tool that can help troubleshooting or how to discover the URLs for tracing, which has been quite difficult since we included more options on this configuration. So if we go into the mesh page and we click on our tracing node, that in this case is Jagger, as you see, and we have made a change, refactoring all these features, and there are some modal to put all the functionality for the tracing tool together. So now if we click in this configuration tester, First, we are going to see our discovery tool, which has been presented in our previous sprint, but I'm going to show you quickly how this works. So independently of the values that we have in our config, Kiali is going to use the default ports that are used for tracing, and is going to try to create a client from Jagger and from Tempo, and based on that results, is going to show us valid configurations. So in this case, we see one of these valid configurations, which is Jagger, and is going to use HTTP and not gRPC. But now we are, as we are running Kiali outside of the cluster, we are going to port forward the tracing for a port for gRPC of Jagger, and we are going to run the discovery. So now we see how it found two valid possible configurations. So now we see that we have used gRPC false in this case, but in the second one, we can use gRPC because it discovered that this gRPC port is open, and this would be like the valid values for this. And in case we wanted to see more context about what this tool was doing, we don't need to go to the Kiali logs because they are already presented here. So we see that it scanned valid ports, 88 is open, but it couldn't find, as we see here, any valid tracing API or endpoint because it's returned at 404. So it can give us some information, and we may want to change from HTTP to gRPC, for example. And this new feature, which is a tester, this is meant to be to improve the usability. In case we want to modify any tracing values, now we are not going to go to the Kiali CR, change the values, wait until the Kiali pod is restarted to see if they are valid or not. So this meant to be like a tool to test these settings online. So for example, we are going to modify this URL and using in an invalid port. So it returned an error. In this case, the connection was refused because there is nothing listening on this port. And we are going to set this to a valid value again. And we are going to, for example, click in Tempo using the Tempo provider. And it also returns an invalid result because something is listening here, but it's not really a valid Tempo configuration. So now we are going to change it to some valid values. And in this case, it returns a valid configuration. And it's important to mention here that these values are not saved. This is just meant to be like a tester. And in case we want to persist the values, they should be done as always in the Kiali CR and be applicable like that. That's it from my side, Matt. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Josune. This should help a lot when folks have misconfigurations that we find a lot. Hopefully this helps ease that pain. Okay, moving on. Here are some notable changes from this sprint. We've made improvements in the validation stuff and for the discovery tool. We've upgraded to Kubernetes Gateway API to 1.3.0. A couple customers have asked us in the server Helm chart to be allowed to skip the RBAC creation. So it gives users more control if they want to manage their own roles and bindings and service accounts. And we've added some updated screenshots in our Kiali.io documentation website, just basically updating all the screenshots so they look like the latest UIs, because there have been some changes there in past releases. So we're just trying to keep the docs up to date there. Bug fixes, minimal bug fixes this sprint. We are trying to keep the CI testing up and viable. There's some flaky tests that we're constantly fighting, but we did fix a bunch this sprint. So our CI, we're still trying to keep up with our CI testing, making sure that our test suites actually detect things that really fail and they're not flaky. So we did a bunch of test fixes this sprint as well. All right, so looking ahead, Sprint 2510, we'll focus on, obviously, Kiali release 2.13, and that target release date is going to be July 18th. And you can track our progress here, see what's planned on the project board. There's a link there in the Kiali project. And we currently have a few epics still in progress. So we've reached the community discussion portion. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll shut the recording off and we can have a community discussion to talk about whatever people want to talk about. Thanks.